This is Dr. Nicholas Rizzo from ringsidemedicine.com with the presentation Drug Testing and Specimen Collection in Combat Sports. Firstly, why test, who gets a test, commission challenges, main types of testing, athlete consideration, sample collection and documentation, cheating and after the collection. These are all subjects we're going to go through in this lecture. So why test becomes the next question. The key reasons are to eliminate unfair advantages, to avoid injuries in combat sports from unfair advantages. The abuse is widespread, much more so than the public and even the regulating bodies may know. A lot of these substances used are frankly illegal to protect the fighters from themselves and to also protect the integrity of the sports. This is one of my favorite slides about the subject, which really displays one of the key things about why we test. And as you can see, the kid is saying what kind of performance enhancer do they use, and the father says talent. What this is really speaking to is about maintaining the integrity of the sport, which is really the whole purpose of sports in the first place. So the next question is, who gets a test? Everybody gets a drug test. Well, that's not really true. In truth, people that get tested are the ones in the big name events. Main events usually get tested. There is also a role of random testing and a suspicious competitor. For example, a commission has the right to select people at random on a certain card for testing that evening. So here is a slide which displays obviously 3 suspicious characters that would probably get tested. There are several challenges to the commissions, though. Many states are faced with significant budget cuts, making staffing and investigations more difficult. A positive results in quite a bit of expense for a commission. Cleaning up commissions in recent years, though, has brought big shows to the states, and that has in part helped the problem. The really big promotions really don't want to mess with commissions or athletes that are trying to pull something over. So how does this relate to testing? The commissions are not the ones paying for the testing, it's really the promoters. But the testing should not be contracted for through the promoters because this presents an ethical challenge. The payment has to go from the promoter to the commission to the party doing the testing. Regarding state and tribal commissions, currently very few athletic commissions perform drug testing for performance-enhancing drugs. Most states, frankly, do not have the manpower, time, and funds to carry out the task the right way. When they do, they usually use reference lab testing. There are some problems with reference lab testing, but it usually serves its purpose of local commission enforcement. There is a lot of pressure to not test. Positive results necessitate hearings, etc., putting pressure on already overworked state prosecutors and commissioners. Pressure from promoters to not cancel bouts and to not have to pay for testing is a big deal at times. There's also pressure from big-name athletes, and there's pressure from fans and media to not test because they want the show to go on, often without regard for the athlete's health. There's 2 main levels of testing. There's WADA accredited labs, which are basically the Olympic-style testing, and they are 4 main national labs in the U.S. throughout the country. These are the ones used by major testing organizations like USADA and VADA, and we'll cover those again in a minute. These are highly secure Olympic-style chain of custody. It is also the highest level of lab standards and technology, and they do much more extensive testing than reference lab testing. They check blood and urine. Reference labs are what people are more accustomed to and certainly more known to the public. Examples of these are Quest, ACO, Redwood, Econolabs, Request a Test. These are basically the same labs that you would have run your labs from a doctor's office or a hospital. These are commonly used by commissions. There's a less secure chain of custody and to some degree less legally defensible. The testing is usually less comprehensive and is urine only. It's rarely unannounced and often is less of a deterrent to the athletes. The list of drugs banned from the Olympics is determined by WADA, which is an international organization that was founded to deal with the increasing problem of doping in sports. This is the gold standard list. This list includes androgens, other hormones, blood doping, stimulants, alcohol, diuretics, narcotics, marijuana. Keep in mind, this is a very long list, and above are just the categories, and these include many common prescription drugs. If you click on the links below, this will actually take you to the actual lists. For reference lab testing, urine testing has historically consisted of 2 basic standard panels. One is the standard drugs of abuse panel, and this is essentially the same panel as you would get in an employment situation. The second is a steroid panel, which tests for most of the common steroids. Things like testosterone, the anabolic steroids, not the anti-inflammatory type of steroids or corticosteroids that you would find at a hospital. Some labs, in order to appear comparable with WADA-accredited labs, are offering sports panels on urine testing. They're basically expanding the urine testing to sound more like the extensive WADA testing. It's not quite the same. So there's several purposes to this presentation today. The first is to distinguish WADA-accredited testing from reference lab testing. The second is to educate about WADA-accredited lab use. It is admittedly more challenging than a reference lab use, but it is absolutely worth the efforts in the appropriate situations. The next thing we want to cover is to review proper protocol for reference lab urine collection, which is what most commissions use. Lastly, sometimes larger or tidal events will require that both WADA-accredited testing for a large sanctioning body and the reference lab testing for the commission be done at the same time. We're going to talk briefly about the testing organizations. The three major ones are WADA, USADA, and VADA. WADA was established in 1999 as an international agency composed and funded equally by the sport movement and governments of the world. This is really the big dog. They have the big official list of banned substances and performance-enhancing drugs. USADA is the anti-doping organization in the U.S. for Olympic, Paralympic, Pan Am sports. It basically can be considered the U.S. arm of WADA. VADA models itself after the other two organizations and is for professional athletes that can volunteer to be subject to unannounced testing at any time during the 8 weeks prior to a scheduled fight. This actually proves to the community that they are remaining clean. So why use WADA-accredited labs and protocol? And the answer is because some athletes using highly sophisticated doping techniques, whether with performance-enhancing drugs or other issues like blood doping, would have passed reference lab 2-panel testing. Doping is more than just drugs. For example, IV fluids after a weigh-in is a doping violation according to WADA. In truth, it is considered an IV therapy. Blood doping is another example. Therapeutic use exemptions, also called TUEs, are granted by commissions for documented medically necessary medications that are also on banned substance lists. Examples would include drugs for ADD like Adderall or Ritalin, beta blockers for blood pressure and other problems, and other medications. Because there may be some likelihood of cross-reactivity and false positive results on drug tests, athletes need to keep officials informed about any prescribed medications or even some over-the-counter drugs they have used. A number of years ago, an Olympic gold medalist was stripped of her gold medal because she had seen a physician a few days prior and was given a cold medicine that had Sudafed in it and was essentially a banned substance. Another example was a NFL quarterback who was taking a protein powder. It turns out that the powder actually contained an anabolic steroid, and he tested positive and was subsequently suspended. The problem with marijuana. The question is it truly a performance-enhancing drug? If not performance-enhancing, is it performance-facilitating? What that means, if it doesn't improve the performance, does it help an athlete from holding back and achieve his peak performance? For example, in the context of an anxiety disorder. While it is banned, its widespread use is making enforcement at times impractical, especially with the coming trend of medical marijuana cards. Additionally, some venues have significant issues with contact highs, actually causing positives in people that really don't have any contact with it otherwise. This is a graphic actually from an herbal product that claims to cleanse the urine in order to pass drug tests. This is specifically for marijuana, and I think it illustrates how far some of the people will go to pass one of the urine drug tests. Consideration of the athlete. Athletes should be informed prior to the event that any competitor may be tested at any time. Historically, urine sample collection procedures need to strike a balance between trusting clients and ensuring that specimens are not contaminated or falsified. This does not apply here, as this is not an elective test. Athlete education, nutrition, supplementation, lists of drugs, etc. are all important. An athlete's diet needs to be supplemented, but they don't need to pay for supplements. That's a key distinction I often use with the athletes. For example, whey protein is just a milk byproduct from cheese making, and the fighters really aren't aware of this. Importance of chain of custody. Chain of custody references a document or paper trail showing the seizure, custody, control, transfer, analysis, and disposition of physical and electronic evidence of a human specimen test. This is critically important. This is where our legal defense comes into play in the case of a positive test. It is critically important to not get distracted by corner members or staff during the chain of custody. It's also very important to utilize extra qualified staff if needed, for example, to maintain a stable collection environment, a safe area, and to prevent the tampering of samples. And again, the chain of custody is a legal requirement. VADA sample collection video. VADA testing has an excellent video which shows the Olympic level of testing with all detail and protocol as you would see for Olympic level of testing or USADA testing. Collection should ideally occur immediately after the fight to prevent in-between round dosing. In other words, a fighter that would test positive before a fight maybe slipped something in between rounds. Some larger events may dictate collection at times other than at the end of the bout. For example, if an organization is testing an entire card, it may not be practical to test all of them afterwards, and the sheer number of tests that need to be done may necessitate that it be done prior to the event. Showers after the collection. This is a time-tested thing that we've learned from trial and error. Do not let the athlete shower prior to getting the sample or prior to letting them know they need to give a sample. Otherwise, sometimes the sample will actually go down the shower drain. Give them some water. If testing a dehydrated athlete, give them a new unopened bottle of water right away. This will really help, especially if it was a long, drawn-out bout and they're really suffering from some post-bout dehydration. The collection area. A sink that is separate from the toilet area also discourages attempts to dilute samples. If you are in a locker room, for example, though, when there are sinks, be sure that somebody is standing by them to not allow them access. Males must use a urinal, not a stall. Females must keep the stall door open. Security is critical. No others are allowed in the direct collection area, for example, corners, trainers, managers, promoters, media, etc. Witnessing is also a requirement. Walk the athlete from the ring and cage straight to the collection area. A staff member of the same sex must accompany the athlete into the bathroom to observe urine collection. Do not leave the athlete unattended during the entire collection process. The athlete should strip down to their underwear. Athlete sample verification is an important process, and we're going to cover this again in a minute. Be sure the minimum amount is retained. Temperature strips affixed to the bottles are used to make sure that urine specimens are produced on site at our body temperature. Noting the body temperature of the specimen is an extremely important aspect of this. If need be, it is absolutely acceptable to physically witness the specimen actually leaving the body. Collection cups. There's several different types. The first, up here at the top, are plain sterile cups, and these can come with plain or hinged caps. They're usually standard ones used for urinalysis, and they can be sterile inside. The second type that you may see are easy key cups, and these are here in the middle picture to the left a little bit. These actually have testing reagents built into cards that can be placed into the urine and tested on site. On the bottom right are Berlinger cups, and these are the Olympic level of cups used by WADA, USADA, and VADA. If you'll note, they have some pretty elaborate caps there. These are very tamper-proof. They can only be opened once and only closed once. On-site testing. This is a closer picture of what the easy cups would look like. Some states are moving towards this for convenience, speed of result, etc. The on-site testing cups may offer a significant opportunity for commissions. They can function as very good screening tests. For example, negatives are considered negatives, but any positives would then be sent on for reference lab testing. One possible drawback, though, is that on-site testing may not offer the extensive panels that reference lab testing or Olympic level testing has. Securing the sample. Securing the labeling and documentation are absolutely critically important. If these are done incorrectly, the sample could be considered invalid because basically there's no proof of chain of custody, and the commission may be liable. So if you look over here to the right bottom, there is a strip that goes over the top, and on the very top of the cap, the fighter has initialed the top to verify that he has actually verified the sample himself. The middle label then is placed over that, the main label with full documentation of the sample. This prevents tampering and the removal of the top label, the strip that goes over the lid. Labels should be checked for accuracy by the athlete and the collecting official. The labels should include the name, signature initials of the athlete, an athlete identification number, a date, and the collector's name or initials. Ideally, the labels should be waterproof, but this is not completely necessary if they're handled appropriately. Also, label it immediately. Don't even take the chance of having one or more samples get mislabeled or mixed up. Documenting the requisition. Requisitions should include the athlete's name, the signature, the athlete ID number, the documentation of the sample temperature, the documentation of the chain of custody, the time and date, the collector's name and signature, and any other required information. The key thing here is to be familiar with the requisition form before the event. You can even fill in things like the date of the event prior, but not anything that would alter the chain of custody. What is a split sample? Splitting the urine sample into two samples allows for one for immediate testing and a second for later confirmatory testing if needed. It is usually done by testing organizations on site or by the lab once the sample is received. It's also called A and B samples. So in this picture you can see that the urine collected on site was poured into the two different bottles in front of the athlete at the time of sample collection. For reference lab testing, a single sample is sent to the lab and then split there at the lab to A and B if needed. The handling of samples is very important. You absolutely must maintain the official chain of custody or physician possession only. Wear gloves. Officials who touch the collection bottles need to wash their hands thoroughly, and don't be surprised at what comes out. For example, blood in the urine in the case of rhabdomyolysis or kidney damage. But if there are any abnormalities, absolutely notify the ringside physician right away. What if an athlete gets transported? There have actually been incidents where athletes have wanted to be transported to a hospital after the fight to avoid the urine testing. If this occurs, whether he's injured or otherwise, a collection officer must accompany, witness, and collect at the site of the hospital. It may be necessary to inform hospital personnel that you are there for that express purpose. Handling of samples and cheating. Information about how to beat the drug testing is widely available. Websites advertise inexpensive products that can be added to urine specimens to absorb toxins, as well as herbal remedies to cleanse the urine. The general consensus on this is that some of these products may actually be able to fool reference lab level testing, but it's extremely unlikely that these would affect Olympic level testing. Concentrated clean specimens can be purchased for mixing with warm water at the test site, and a variety of low-cost self-testing kits are also available to preview likely results from more formal testing procedures. I've included this slide to show the level of dedication to the agendas these athletes have. This is what we're up against. This slide shows different ways of cheating. If you'll notice at the bottom left, there's a thigh strap with a flask. The flask is held against the skin for the purpose of keeping it as close to body temperature as possible. To the far right, there's actually a fake male organ designed to actually have the urine come out. As you can see, there's a whole industry surrounding this. The marketing is quite impressive. People have been quite creative in coming up with ways to cheat. Fake documentation on bottle labels have been printed out. Samples have been switched when collecting official deliberately is distracted. Samples have been microwaved or placed on heat packs to reproduce body temperature. Aggressive athletes are tried to confound or influence or distract officials, even offering to help, saying, "Don't worry, I'll bring it back ringside for you." Under no circumstances let that occur. Tests of creatinine, which is a waste product found in the urine, or specific gravity can determine whether a sample has been diluted with water or the athlete is consuming excessive fluids to lower the concentration of drugs below detectable levels. Again, security is paramount. Collected specimens need to be kept cool or refrigerated until transmitted to the laboratory. They should be stored in a protected or locked room for security. By OSHA rules, you need an absorbent material inside the biohazard bag when shipping. So if you look here at the bottom picture, there's the biohazard bag, and inside is actually a small paper towel. That basically meets the requirement. Additionally, secure mailing with tracking, proper and secure shipping, overnight or 2-day with tracking are critical. Up here on the right is a FedEx clinical pack. What this is a pack that FedEx designed specifically for the transport of biohazard or laboratory specimens. Who can guess what the very last step is? You got it. Wash the hands. Claim you aren't on any illegal substances, including meth, cocaine, and THC. Your urine drug screen determined that was a lie. Thank you again for watching this presentation. This and other presentations are available at ringsidemedicine.com.